Hey warriors, you've been underestimating the danger you carry every time you rush to prove you're harmless. Every time you explain yourself, you reduce your leverage. Every moment you chase clarity from people committed to misunderstanding you, you surrender position. Every time you react before you calculate, you hand other people your control. That ends today, because most people are taught to make themselves easy to read, easy to soothe, easy to use, and then they wonder why nobody treats them like a force. Machiavelli saw this long before the modern world learned how to disguise weakness as politeness. He understood that power does not begin when people like you. It begins when they realize they cannot move you at will. That is the shift, that is the line. And once you cross it, your entire presence changes. The weak majority keeps talking. They keep justifying. They keep trying to be seen as good, reasonable, safe, agreeable, harmless. But power players move differently. They don't react. They don't explain. They observe. They calculate. They keep their center while everyone else leaks emotion, intention, and dependency into the room. Machiavelli knew that the person who needs less, reveals less, and flinches less becomes difficult to control. And in a world built on manipulation, difficulty is a form of armor. In this video, you'll learn the signs that you are more dangerous than you realize, even if you spent years thinking your restraint was weakness. You'll discover why silence, indifference, and measured distance make you more untouchable than aggression ever could. You'll understand how your ability to hold position under pressure turns ordinary social situations into strategic terrain where other people reveal themselves first. This is not about cruelty. It is not about becoming cold for performance. It is not about playing villain because you feel wounded. This is about reclaiming control from people who feed on your reactions. This is about learning that your calm can carry more power than their chaos. This is about understanding that being dangerous does not mean being loud. It means being difficult to read, difficult to provoke, and difficult to replace. Machiavelli did not respect noise. He respected leverage. And leverage belongs to the person who can stay composed while everyone else burns energy trying to force a response. That is what makes a person strategic. That is what makes a person untouchable. Now I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I control my presence. Number 1. Silence as leverage. Silence becomes dangerous when you stop treating it like discomfort. Machiavelli understood that most people speak to reduce tension, not to increase precision, which is why they reveal their motives the moment pressure enters the room. He saw that speech often serves the weaker party because the person who fears silence usually fills it with confession, apology, or submission. That is the trap. That is why controlled silence creates power. Machiavelli knew that unreadable people hold position because nobody can predict where to press. You are in a conversation where someone tries to bait you into defending yourself. They exaggerate, provoke, and wait for you to rush into explanation. You stay still. You let the silence sit on them until their own insecurity forces them to keep talking. And the more they talk, the more they expose their need for control. Silence shifts the frame. Silence creates leverage. Silence makes you untouchable. Instead, pause before responding when emotion enters the room. Instead, let people sit inside the uncertainty they tried to create for you. Instead, use silence as a strategic filter that reveals who can handle your control and who cannot. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I weaponize silence. Number 2. Observation before expression. Dangerous people read the room before they reveal themselves to it. Machiavelli taught that survival belongs to the one who understands appearances, intentions, and timing better than the people trying to shape the scene. He did not admire impulsive honesty when it destroyed position. He admired disciplined perception. That is why strategic observation is power. Machiavelli recognized that when you watch first, you gather leverage while everyone else spends it through careless expression. You enter a new workplace, a new circle, or a new relationship, and everyone rushes to establish identity through stories, opinions, and emotional display. You do less. You watch how praise is distributed, how disrespect is hidden, who interrupts, who gossips, who performs confidence, and who quietly holds influence. By the time you speak, you already know the hierarchy better than the people acting inside it. Observation protects your position. Expression can wait. Control belongs to the one who sees the game. Instead, enter unfamiliar environments with restraint, not urgency. Instead, collect patterns before you offer personal information, loyalty, or reaction. Instead, let your first advantage be strategic awareness, because people rarely defend themselves against someone they assume is passive. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I see before acting. Number 3. Rejection does not move you. Your danger rises the moment approval stops controlling your decisions. Machiavelli understood that dependency is the pressure point behind most human behavior, because people who need acceptance can be steered through reward and withdrawal. He saw how easily people abandon judgment when belonging is threatened. That is why indifference to approval becomes leverage. Machiavelli knew that the person who can tolerate exclusion becomes difficult to manipulate, because social pressure loses its teeth against someone who remains internally stable. You present an idea, set a boundary, or make a decision, and someone withdraws warmth to punish you for it. They go cold. They become dismissive. They hope you will hurry back into alignment just to restore comfort. You do not chase. You do not soften your position. You let their reaction belong to them, and your calm exposes the fact that they expected control, not mutual respect. Rejection is information. It is not command. Indifference protects power. Instead, treat disapproval as a test of your center, not a verdict on your worth. Instead, let people reveal the cost of disagreeing with them before you decide how close they deserve to remain. Instead, keep your position when pressure appears, because that is how leverage replaces need. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I do not chase. Number 4, you do not over-explain. The less you need to be understood by everyone, the stronger your position becomes. Machiavelli recognized that over-explanation is often disguised fear, because people explain excessively when they are trying to manage perception rather than direct reality. He understood that the need to seem innocent makes a person easier to corner. The more you justify, the more material you hand over. Machiavelli respected concise clarity because it denies manipulators the emotional openings they depend on. You set a boundary with a friend, a partner, or a colleague, and they respond with wounded confusion designed to drag you into a long defense. You feel the familiar pressure to soften, clarify, and prove that you are still fair, but you stop. You state the boundary once in plain language and refuse to keep negotiating the legitimacy of your own control. Over-explaining leaks power. Brevity hardens position. Control loves clean language. Instead, answer direct questions with direct sentences and nothing extra. Instead, stop adding emotional padding to decisions you have already made. Instead, let your silence after clarity communicate that your position is settled, not available for emotional bargaining. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I owe no defense. Number 5. Your indifference is selective. Real danger is not emotional numbness. It is disciplined allocation of attention. Machiavelli understood that attention is political because what you reward grows, what you chase gains value, and what you ignore often weakens on its own. He did not teach random coldness. He taught strategic indifference. That distinction matters. Machiavelli knew that when you stop feeding trivial provocations, you preserve leverage for the moments that actually shape your power. Someone posts a subtle insult, throws a passive-aggressive remark into conversation, or tries to pull you into petty conflict where everyone loses position. You notice it immediately. You understand the invitation, but you refuse to make their small move important enough to deserve your energy. Your lack of reaction collapses the stage they built for themselves. Not everything deserves engagement. Not every attack deserves response. Indifference is control in action. Instead, reserve your energy for threats that affect reputation, resources, or long-term position. Instead, let minor disrespect expose the insecurity of the person delivering it. Instead, Practice selective silence, so your response, when it comes, carries strategic weight instead of emotional residue. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I choose my battles. Number 6. You can leave without spectacle. The ability to withdraw cleanly is one of the clearest signs of power. Machiavelli understood that those who cannot walk away are ruled by attachment, and attachment makes every negotiation unequal from the start. He saw that desperation destroys leverage because the side that must remain will tolerate terms the stronger side would reject. This is why strategic exit matters. Machiavelli knew that your willingness to leave often controls the room more than your willingness to stay. You notice a pattern of disrespect in a relationship, a workplace or a social circle, and the old version of you would have stayed just to keep access, harmony, or hope alive. This time you do not argue your value. You do not threaten. You do not stage a dramatic departure. You reduce access, remove availability, and step back with complete control over your own position. Exit creates leverage. Distance restores clarity. Withdrawal can make you untouchable. Instead, leave situations at the first confirmed pattern, not the 20th apology. Instead, make your absence precise, quiet, and final enough to be felt without being announced. Instead, understand that your power increases when people know you can detach without collapsing. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I leave with control. Number 7. You regulate emotional tempo. The person who controls pace often controls outcome. Machiavelli understood that emotional speed favors the manipulator, who can provoke a rushed response because haste compresses judgment and weakens strategic thinking. He knew that panic, anger, and urgency are tools in the hands of anyone trying to move you off your center. That is why tempo matters. Machiavelli taught that control of timing is control of power, and Machiavelli was merciless about the cost of reacting too soon. A conflict begins through text in person or in a public setting, and the other person keeps escalating, pushing for an immediate answer before you can think. You feel the pressure. You feel the invitation to react, but you slow everything down. You refuse the pace they chose, and the moment you do that, the imbalance begins to reverse. Speed is not always strength. Urgency is often manipulation. Strategic delay restores leverage. Instead, take time before answering emotionally loaded messages or demands. Instead, lower your voice, slow your speech, and force the interaction onto ground you can control. Instead, make other people adapt to your tempo, because composure makes your power visible without a single threat. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I control the pace. Number 8, people confess around you. When you become still enough, other people reveal more than they intend. Machiavelli understood that most people expose themselves not because they are forced, but because they feel safe, superior, or unobserved in the presence of restraint. He knew that disciplined silence invites projection, and projection is a direct line into motive. This is where quiet power becomes dangerous. Machiavelli saw that if you reveal less, others compensate by revealing more, and that gives you position without effort. You sit in conversation and someone begins by testing you, measuring your reactions, searching for cracks. You give them very little. You stay attentive, neutral, and precise. Within minutes, they start volunteering opinions, resentments, insecurities, and ambitions. Because your restraint creates a vacuum their ego cannot resist filling. People tell on themselves. Patterns surface fast. Observation becomes leverage. Instead, speak less than your impulse tells you to speak in early interactions. Instead, ask clean questions and let silence do the extraction for you. Instead, become so composed that people mistake your control for openness, then hand you the map to their own psychology. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I reveal nothing easily. Now step back and see the pattern clearly. What makes you dangerous is not aggression, noise, or theatrical dominance. It is the collapse of your predictability. It is the moment other people realize they cannot bait you, rush you, guilt you, or confuse you into surrendering your position. That is where your power stops being symbolic and starts becoming operational. Most people spend their lives trying to seem acceptable. They manage perception, they smooth edges, they explain intentions, they signal harmlessness. But the moment you stop performing comfort for people who rely on your reactions, your presence changes. Your silence becomes heavier. Your indifference becomes harder to manipulate. Your boundaries stop sounding like requests and start sounding like structure. That is why dangerous people are often underestimated at first. They do not arrive with spectacle, they arrive with control. They do not beg for attention. They alter the emotional climate by refusing to become emotionally available on demand. They hold tempo, they hold leverage, they hold position. And because they are not leaking need, they become untouchable in ways loud people never understand. You don't need to convince everyone. You don't need to answer every provocation. You don't need to keep access to people who only value the version of you they can control. You need precision. You need silence. You need strategic distance strong enough to protect your power without announcing it. This is the transformation. You are no longer the person who panics when misunderstood, folds when pressure rises, or performs softness to avoid conflict. You are the person who reads first, speaks last, and leaves cleanly. You are the person whose calm unsettles manipulators because it gives them nothing to hold. You are the person whose restraint is not weakness, but calibrated force. This is your final power statement. I am calm, unreadable, and untouchable. And that is the identity you carry now, not a loud threat, not a reckless force, but a strategic presence built on control, leverage, indifference, and silence. As Machiavelli understood, the most dangerous person in the room is rarely the one making the most noise. It is the one nobody can move. If this video helped you see the game more clearly, hit that like button because it pushes this message toward people who are still leaking power without realizing it. Subscribe to this channel because we go deeper into the strategic mechanics of human behavior, control, and position in every video. Share this with someone who keeps explaining themselves to people who only respect pressure and keeps mistaking reaction for strength. And remember, the world does not fear the loudest person. It fears the one it cannot predict, cannot provoke, and cannot control.